Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to this Enterprise Customer Panel session here at Onshape Live 2022. Let me start by saying thank you to you all for joining us today. It's my pleasure to be your host for the next 45 minutes or so, and I'm delighted to be joined by three amazing Onshape customers who are on our panel today. The goal of today's session is to learn and understand a bit more about how enterprise companies are using Onshape to transform their product development processes to drive positive business outcomes. In terms of our agenda today, for the first half of the session, I'll be asking questions to our panel, and the second half will be dedicated to you, our audience, where you will have the opportunity to ask any questions that you may have. So in order to do this, you will need to use the Q&A box on your screens and type your questions. And my colleague, Steve Myers, is going to kindly monitor and moderate those questions as they come through. So just before I introduce our panel and the stars of the show, I'll just maybe take a moment to briefly introduce myself for those that haven't met me before. My name is Steve Mahoney. I'm a senior director here at Onshape, and I lead our global enterprise sales organization. A bit about my background: I've been in the computer-aided design and product development industry for about 20 years now. My main responsibilities here at Onshape is really ensuring the success and the growth of our enterprise customers, three of which are on our panel today. So that's my prelude done, and it's time for us to introduce our panel for today. Redland, I'm going to come to you first. If you could introduce yourself and your role, and maybe give us a brief summary as to why you began using Onshape at your company. So Redland, over to you.
Thanks, Steve. Can you just hear me? Can I just do it? Yeah, audio check, fine. So Redland Sanders, I'm a technical director at DHL's R&D division. So we're an in-house group of engineers of all kind of skill sets: software, hardware, electronics, mechanical engineering, etc., and automation. And we sit within DHL supply chains, warehousing and kind of co-pack operation business unit. So DHL is this massive company that runs 10% of the world's logistics, and we sit in that part that does a lot of piecework, moving products around, either unloading containers into warehouses. It's all done by hand, and that's a terrible task that needs to be automated because it's done everywhere across the world. And then the other aspect is configuring customers' products to put them into, say, final packaging, whether it's retail packaging for a season or some other product, to send it out. Whether that, it might be, as an example, something like an iPhone or a smart device where product gets put into a box with leaflets, all those kind of things. This is all typically done by hand. And we're in an increasing world of shortages of labor to do all these very kind of dexterous and very high piece count work. So our team focuses on building the automation systems and working out clever ways to solve all of these unique challenges that DHL has in-house.
Great, thank you, Redland. And how long have you been using Onshape?
So we're in about 3 years in now. And we're a team of, we're still only 16 engineers in total, but the nature of the software allows that 16 to have a very, very high impact and to work very quickly. So something that I didn't mention previously is the way robotics essentially is, every time you tackle a problem, there are elements of it that are one-off and bespoke. And so going off and using traditional engineering methods to make the components to solve that problem is prohibitively expensive. It makes the automation really expensive, and that's been a traditional barrier. We have to solve these problems, so we can't use those tools. So we have an additive first methodology, which we leverage the fact that the atoms essentially arrange themselves for free on the print bed, and you go in the next morning and your part's built, and then you try it, you test it, you make another change, and then so the only cost you've embedded into that component is the raw material cost, which is pence on per gram kind of thing. So it's allowing us to do very, very fast iteration between components, and that's our core driver for using Onshape.
Great. That additive first approach is very interesting. We're going to touch on that a bit later. So thank you, Redland. And Bart, can I come to you next? Would you mind introducing yourself and your company?
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, I'm Bart van Let. I'm working at Festo. Festo is a very well-known company, I think, in the machine building community for delivering all kinds of machine parts, from mechanical parts to motors, controllers, whatever. But Festo also has a department which is called Customer Solutions, and we do customer-specific solutions for all kinds of customers and distributors. And what I'm doing is I'm the engineering team manager for the customer solutions part of the Benelux, so Belgium, Netherlands, and Luxembourg. And in the past, I've always been a design engineer, later project engineer, and a while ago I made the switch to engineering manager. And of course, because we're working with customers, it's always it's a very dynamic world, and we're working in very different markets, actually, ranging from automotive to food to packaging to, well, you mentioned it, and Festo can do something in that. And that's also why we need to be very flexible. And from I think the last 10 years we've been working with Creo. Before that, Pro-E started with Creo when it came out. And then we found that we missed something, and that's because Creo is a very solid package of engineering tools, which we can use very good for production and everything in the back office. But we missed a way of cooperating with our customers more intensively, and that's actually where Onshape came in. And since I think about 3 years, we switched to changing a workflow and incorporating Onshape in it. And until now, we've been very happy with that. So yeah.
Great. Thank you very much, Bart. And last but certainly not least, Adrian, could you do the same, please?
Yeah, thanks, Steve. So I'm Adrian Velasquez. I am CAD engineering manager at Dexcom. We are a medical device company that focuses on the treatment and management of diabetes. So our technology is a continuous glucose monitor, basically replacing your finger stick, your glucometer, with a sensor that's in the body for an extended period of time. So Dexcom kind of has a really fast-grown kind of mindset that we've grown a lot, and we've kind of discovered Onshape early on. Kind of been in the CAD industry as a kind of CAD geek for a long time. So when I heard of it back in 2014, I think I kind of jumped on it, even pre-public beta. So I've been testing it since then, and one way or another, looking at the technology being cloud-based. So as kind of the product mature, we started running different pilots and tests that, like, if it was worth kind of bringing into our environment. And then just last year, we've kind of made the decision to kind of transition as our primary CAD package for our teams. We have over 300 users, so that makes it really kind of difficult and kind of cost intensive just to manage all those installations and deployments. And we're onboarding engineers every other day, collaborating with a lot of partners that use different versions of other products, different releases. So that's also been a challenge, and one of the reasons why Onshape just seems to be the right solution going forward for us.
Great. Thank you, Adrian. Very interesting indeed. So hope you all agree. What a fantastic panel we have here today. And a special thank you to our panelists for taking the time to spend with us here at Onshape Live. So I think it's time to start some questions. I'm going to dig into those right now. And just before I do that, I think I'd like to frame them with some of the key themes that you heard Jim and John talk about in their keynote presentations just a moment ago. You know, this idea of the methodology of agile and how companies need to improve their innovation velocities and pace of development. And it's certainly something that I believe resonates with the three panelists that we have here today. So Redland, I'm going to start with you if that's okay. And, you know, agile methodologies really were once only used to expedite, you know, software development processes, but now more and more so are becoming popular in the design and development of hardware in manufacturing. And I'm really keen for the audience to hear how how Onshape has helped you at DHL become more agile in your development processes.
Okay, so there is a number of advantages that we get from the tool that you can't get from other CAD packages. So you can list them. The kind of top level for us that allows that agility would be the speed your engineers can work at regardless of where they're located. So that kind of team collaboration. But that applies whether you're doing a design review and you have a distributed engineering team, and you're doing a design review during an install of a machine and you find something's not quite as it was supposed to be on the spec. So an engineer there literally is on the video call, giving you measurements, taking a measurement, or designing the part in the CAD. Other people are contributing to it, and then you send it to the file. You send it to the printer, and then it's made overnight, and then it gets taken to the site the next day. It's like that kind of flexibility that everyone can be sharing the access to that file space, and making enhancements or changing it. The other aspects, I think it's the flow of the part. So we're not designing components that are fixed in time, and then they get done, and that's it. It's painful to make a change to it. The component should flow in its form and its function as is required to make enhancements to it. And so you get that with the kind of the history change. You can do a branch. Two engineers can tackle a problem, and they might tackle it in a different way, and then kind of rebranch, combine them back together, and it goes the whole way through to the full system view of a robot. I think the lower barrier to entry in terms of the cost helps with the agility, because you could just turn on seats. Like, don't make it difficult to get access to your CAD package when a new starter arrives. Don't make this big hurdle. It's like all of these barriers are just not there. It's and that's quite nice and refreshing. So every engineer should have access to it, even whatever tool set they're in, so that they can contribute to the package.
Right.
Yeah, okay. I go on for a while, but that's fine. I think that's the kind of main points.
Yeah, no, very, very interesting. Thank you, Redland. And so Bart, move across to you if I can. You mentioned at the beginning in your introduction how Onshape is helping speed up the front end of your engineering process. So how is Onshape really allowing you to be more agile when it comes to collaborating with your customers?
Well, that's let's say simply, we worked in an old-fashioned way, and that was that we had a back office making all the drawings, and then they made step files and 2D files and PDFs and whatever, and they would send them to our sales guys in the field, and they would discuss this with the customer, and they came back and say, you have to change this, you have to change that, so please do that. Came back to the back office and then did it all again, and that took, if we were lucky, it took days, otherwise it took weeks or even longer, with difficult changes. And that made that we were a little bit detached, so that the whole customer experience was not that great. And also the experience of our guys was not that great, because they had to wait for everything. They had to ask for different formats. Customers were working with, I don't know, SolidWorks or maybe Solid Edge or whatever, one of the other packages. So we had to convert it. Details were lost in step files, things like that. And what happens with Onshape is actually quite nice, because on the one hand, we stepped over from working from engineer to sales guy to purchaser to engineer at the customer, and then back, and that multiple times. We switched to, okay, just connect the engineers together and let them speak to each other, and then they just create a design together. And that really works. And also the last 2 years with the COVID pandemic was, of course, even better, because we couldn't just link two engineers together, ask them to find the right solution. And then only the selling of the solution in the end was quite easy, because we worked on it together with the customer, so there was no discussion anymore. And Onshape provided to be the perfect platform for that, because we could both access it. And we had no discussion, and you could just very easily add comments from our side or for the customer side, or we could sometimes send a link to the sales guy. Look, this is where we are now. What do you want us to do next? It's a very nice tool which focuses much more also on communication than only the making of the drawings and just sending out drawings and waiting for them to come back. So we totally can skip the whole email stuff. We can also skip the whole, what do you use? WeTransfer or whatever, one of those big parties which is used to send large files, because it's all online, and also because you can open it in a browser. You have no hassle with downloading software or whatever. You can just send a link, open it, work together, and in the end, we are still, of course, linked to a big production company where we need to use Creo. But the whole front end up to the final design actually can be easily done in Creo, and much easier than on the old, in Onshape, much easier than in the old Creo way.
Right. So Creo is used in your kind of core engineering, like your back office, but Onshape is your front end kind of design engineering collaboration tool that you use with customers. And very, very cool. Very interesting. Thank you, Bart. Adrian, can I come to you now? And medical device companies are, it's kind of paramount that you have speed, agility, and innovation. So my question to you would be, how did you kind of change the mindset from a traditional file-based product development process to a cloud native? How did you, how did you make that transition, and what did you do to do it?
Yeah, so like I said, we've grown really fast. So just keeping up with the growth in terms of managing the tool had become almost impossible. And as the company grow, it's kind of like the snowball effects. Like we found like users that were not kind of in our environment, they were just kind of operating rogue. We end up finding new teams that we never heard of that are using the CAT, and they're not under kind of the standard implementation. So we kind of continue to see those trends, and as kind of in parallel, where we're kind of identifying a lot of these gaps and issues in our environment, we kind of saw Onshape grow into something that could be kind of prime time and a replacement for or a formal tool. So in parallel, we're kind of evaluating both situations. And what we focus on, seeing what Onshape was kind of maturing to be, was removing all the non-value added activities. That's just like from the admin standpoint of things. So like installations, troubleshooting, support, hardware, all of those things. We try to eliminate from the admin side of it, and then focus on the user, the designer as well, where like all these non-value added activities, like sending files, importing files, just like fixing references, loading the right version, all of those things, kind of what we saw the opportunity as far as being able to kind of be more agile as a company. So in all, we kind of identified about a 15% improvement in productivity for our users. So
wow.
It might not sound a lot for some people, maybe small companies, like they're willing to make that compromise. But we're thinking like 300 plus users. So 50% multiplied by 300, you're talking about engineers, managers, project managers. So that's a considerable amount of cost impact.
Yeah, huge amounts of productivity. And are you finding that it's helping, to drive that innovation velocity for you at Dexcom?
Yeah, absolutely. What kind of we've been identifying is that as soon as people jump in it and start using it, they start like they don't want to go back to the old ways, like dealing with files, references, and all that. So yeah, that in that sense, we've seen kind of that collaboration and agility in terms of the development and the design stage.
Fantastic. So 15% productivity improvement and increased innovation velocity. Perfect. Thank you, Adrian. I'm going to come back to you, Redland. So really intrigued and kind of fascinated by your additive first approach. I've been fortunate enough to visit you and your facility here in the UK. Could you tell us how Onshape has really helped bring that additive first approach to life? I know it's a really important strategy for what you do in DHL.
Okay, so I think you could probably categorize it and say that we couldn't do what we do without Onshape. It's been an enabler for what we do. And what I should really do is put some context around that working kind of process that we have. So we pride ourselves on fail fast, kind of learn fast, very rapid design iteration. Sometimes you might get 5 in a day, and this is enabled by the fact that we've got a room full of printers, essentially, free access to any of the engineers. They can design a small component, and then you print off a section of that component to check the geometry, check the fits and tolerances, everything else it's going to be, strength. And you might only do a 10 mil layer. It comes off 2 hours later. Okay, let's make a change, and you could then do it, do a bigger one on another print. So we might have, say, 5 design iterations in a day. And then at the end of the day, you set up a bed and you come back the next morning, you've got 10 complete parts that then can be tested and developed. That speed, because it's essentially a full digital workflow in terms of the manufacturing and the design, and it's relatively closed loop. I mean, it could be perfect, it could be better. We could have a full integration of all of our 3D printing systems into the software world, but that's a case of linking together different manufacturers. But it's pretty good. So it enables us to work incredibly quickly, and we just wouldn't be able to do this level of integration and rapid design changes that we're doing. And really what this is about is actually driving down the cost of engineering, of bespoke engineering, and solving problems for the customers within DHL, because we're doing stuff so quickly with such little cost embedded in these parts, and the purpose made to suit a specific purpose. So it's that whole workflow is just not possible without Onshape. So I don't know, we'd have to struggle a different way without it. It's been really enabling.
Great. For the record, we couldn't do our jobs without Onshape. Thank you, Redland. Thank you.
Not allowed to endorse it, but it's pretty good.
Yeah. Okay. And talking about 3D printing, Bart, you and your team are, you have an additive manufacturing side of your business. And could you tell us how, Onshape is really helping you speed up tasks like prototyping and even just coming up with concept generation for your customers? Would you give us some insights into that, please?
Yeah, it's quite interesting how this developed, actually, because we in the past we produced a lot of parts in the Netherlands, for example, and we didn't do that anymore because we had very big factories in all over the world. But what we kept was a prototyping workshop, and we focused on making it as easy as possible there to use all the machines. We have 5-axis CNC machines, lathes, whatever, and also multiple 3D printers with different technologies. And we were actually looking also for a way of enabling people to use all those machines as simply by just clicking and walking to the machines, putting some material in, and start making something. And that's very difficult if you need to make 3D files, 2D files. You need your back office to do that. So what we see now with Onshape is that we introduced it not only for the engineers, but also the more technical sales guys, which we have in the field, do have the availability for Onshape. And that means that anyone can make a design, anyone can change it, and also anyone can change the design while at the customer or even while they're at home. And that makes it very easy to create 3D models. And then because we have this workshop, this prototyping workshop, where we also have all the possible ways to create a real model from a 3D model, we completed the workflow, actually. So what we do is we make one prototype, we give it to the sales guy, he goes to the customer and say, we need to change this, this, and this. Then at the customer, they make the changes. They can even start the 3D printers from the cloud, from the customer. And if it needs to be metal, they can just call us, say, okay, please look, here is the link. Please make a new model. And sometimes even before the sales engineer is back in the office to pick it up, the part's already there. And that makes it really fast. And if you compare that to a few years ago, where we needed to make a request for a prototype and then had to wait for the prototype and it's wrong, damn, we have to do it again. And then make a new request, and that took days or weeks again. And now we are sometimes there. We have a focus now to produce everything which is requested within 48 hours. And I think in 99% of the time we also manage to do that. So that's a very big change. And that's for a large part also enabled by using Onshape, because everybody just has the access and everybody can comment on it and everybody can make different branches and say, okay, please try this, please try this. And that makes sure that all the creativeness which is there in people can be used to go quickly to the right solution.
Yeah, fantastic. Fantastic. Thank you, Bart. Okay, and moving over to Adrian, I have a question around how what kind of advice would you give to other large organizations that are experimenting and about to take the transition from kind of as you say, the old way into the new cloud native way of working? Could you shed some advice to people on doing that?
Yeah, I would kind of suggest to kind of take a step back from your environment and your day in, day out activities and really make a thorough analysis of where your pain points are with traditional CAD. Because like I said, in our case, we were able to quantify those non-value-added activities because my team kind of is the first point of contact. We provide support internally and for like troubleshooting, installations, and all that. So through our ticket system, we're able to categorize and analyze kind of the types of requests, all the downtime. If not just onboarding new users, but existing users, they're getting a new computer or their computer gets re-imaged. So this is all downtime they have, and that's cost money and it's cost productivity. So we kind of took that and make it our, like I said, our goal is we shouldn't be dealing with this non-value-added activities. Our users should be free of all this downtime and holdups, and also with the traditional file management system. Again, file references, loading the wrong versions, all of that stuff is just downtime to our designers. So that's kind of what I would suggest, is just take a step back, really look at what your teams are doing. Like, are they really taking advantage of the tool you're using? Because one of my biggest points when we started the conversations with different leaders at the company, managers and team leaders, they started asking, like, does Onshape do this? Does Onshape do that? Everything that we do in our current CAD. And we're like, they were all like modeling based questions, like functionality. And my kind of, the phrase that I like to use is like, we're not moving to Onshape because of modeling. We're moving to Onshape because it's going to enable the company to kind of just be more agile. Again, that word, that term, the agility that we're going to gain by not having all that overhead work associated with the tool. That's kind of the driver, and that would be my kind of overall recommendation, is look at Onshape not for the CAD functionality, the modeling functionality, but what it can do to your business in terms of transformation and being more agile. Yeah.
Awesome. I love that approach. And to bring this back into your world, Redland, what have you been able to identify? Identify or apportion any metrics to Onshape as your business improvements?
It's really difficult. In short, no. Just because we haven't done that work, like there's no value in us to ourselves, literally patting ourselves on the back and saying, "Oh yeah, we've got 30% productivity improvement."
Right.
And not working on that from that perspective. What I will say is, absolutely, in terms of scaling out output. So let's talk about it in the much more objective frame. The best kind of output you can get, your most expensive resource is your engineering team. Like, the highly paid, highly skilled, designers, whatever tool sets they're working in. So you really want to maximize their output, not only the speed at which they can work, remove all the barriers from them getting something done, but actually if you can allow them, give them the tools to scale their output so that once they've done something once, that network never has to be done again. somebody else can literally just come in, jump on and access that. So this exists in software. This is what the software world is about. You've scaled your engineering output. You can solve a problem once, boom, you've got a library, go give it to someone else, get that job done. So achieving that in hardware is much, much harder. And I think Onshape gives us a route to achieving high scalability in engineering effort in terms of the hardware output. So just as an example, you could do this at the component level, but even on the way to a product, and then the system level as well. So component level might be a robot tool, so end effector for a vacuum end effector. So we focus on, I talked about fail fast and everything else, but it's also high integration. Absolutely eliminate as many components as you can. If there doesn't need to exist, get rid of it. Best component doesn't exist, but also the best component is one that takes on the job of something else, so that you just haven't had to design it, stock it, hold it, all those kind of things. So additive manufacturing lets you do that. We print vacuum channeled tooling, but that tooling doesn't have to be done by designed by one engineer as a really elaborate section of lofts or sweeping over surfaces. It can be completely generated from a configurable a configuration table, number of pickup points, distance between them, everything else. So the engineering effort goes into making this completely modular, software-driven physical output that you then send to the printer, and it manifests itself in a product. And then anyone, any skill level engineer can go in and generate this really elaborate part that's highly integrated, that does the job, but they haven't had to do all of this really detailed engineering effort behind it. And so that comes from configurable parts, but we've done it in conveyor belts. You literally have a fully formulaic driven conveyor belt system from Onshape, and then you end up with this bill of materials. You get your print list, you go and get your cut list, and then you go and assemble the thing in 2 days. It's phenomenal. But you can go even further. So we're doing it with the robot systems as well, but there's some breakdown because obviously you have to bound the scope of what the robot can achieve, whether it's a palletizer or doing something else. But it's so in terms of the positive outcomes, all of that's scaling that thing. It's essentially taking lessons from the software world and allowing it to manifest in the physical hardware world, and taking all of that that good stuff. And that's so no, in terms of metrics, yes, absolutely. It's a key enabler for following that pathway.
Great, and we had Adrian talk about 15% productivity improvement, and Bart, you mentioned around helping to improve the collaboration with customers and the speed at the front end. So fascinating stuff. Thank you all for answering those questions. And now we've reached the point in our agenda where we have some questions from our audience, I believe. So Steve Myers, I'm going to let you open up the floor to answering some questions from our audience, if that's okay.
Sure. Thanks, Steve. Just verify everyone can hear me.
Yep, we got you.
Great. Okay, so we have a few questions here, and some of our audience have directed these to individuals. So this one is for Adrian regarding medical devices. The question is, how does Onshape, and I'm not familiar with all the terminology here, so we'll let you explain, Adrian. Yeah. As a medical device company, how does Onshape fit into your current QMS requirements? And do you expect your QMS system to adapt and change to take advantage of the fast collaboration tools that you have in Onshape?
Yeah, so we have a parent system. Our PLM system is the kind of validated or regulated system in our environment. Our CAD system has, for many reasons, has not been that kind of validated environment. So everything that's designed in CAD then goes through PDM or the data management system, in this case, Onshape. It's kind of then uploaded to that PLM system for QMS purposes. So that's kind of the first part of the question. And the second part is we are looking to integrate Onshape directly to that PLM system so that we can have that interactivity in terms of like pulling part numbers, pulling CO numbers, pushing bombs, and all of those kind of workflow events. We do have a kind of sort of sync workflow between our data management, CAD data management, and the PLM system. So yeah.
Great.
Hope that answers the question.
Thank you. Another question we have, and I'm not sure if this is directed at one of you or not. I lost track of some of the numbers as I was listening to presentations, but we have a question regarding a 15% efficiency improvement that was realized with Onshape. and the attendee is asking how that was calculated. Maybe you could somebody could give us just a feel for the kinds of metrics that your management cared about and how you measured those and presented those as you considered making the switch.
Yeah, so that was me. Like I said, my team supports all users. So we have over 300, and we have a ticket system where you input kind of your question, what type of question is. So there's kind of like a form you fill out, and we use that form for a specific purpose, which is we can categorize those fields. And we know like 30% of our workload for the CAD engineering team is installation related, right? And then 10% is setup and configuration. Another percentage is just kind of references. So we have a very kind of analytical way of handling that. And for that same reason, because we want to understand those interactions and that downtime. As our company grows, that information adds value. And we also run an annual survey directly with our users so that we have specific questions as far as where they see kind of opportunities, the type of downtime they experience, how they collaborate externally, internally. Do they send files through email? Do they send files through an FTP or a kind of cloud drive? So we do have information that we run, and that's kind of how we were able to put a number on that productivity. Of course, it fluctuates between roles and departments, but on average, we were confident of that number.
Great, thank you. Next question we have is actually directed at Bart. When selling Onshape internally to your leadership, what key business metrics did your management care about most?
Ooh, that's a difficult question. Yeah, the problem there is that we are mainly concerned with the whole workflow and how fast we are. And that's, of course, always difficult to determine. I mean, every project is different, every customer is different, every trajectory you go in is different. But we were able to at least say how much time it would save by showing them just, okay, this is the normal workflow which we would have used, and this is the workflow we are able to do with Onshape. To say, okay, do you see that we skip many steps? And do you see that the amount of iterations within even a week is so much higher than we do in the traditional way, where we send it to the back office and wait for the new drawings to arrive and to send them and maybe make some errors, and then we forgot one dimension or whatever, and we have to do it again. That takes so much time, and we only needed to show about 10 projects. And it really spoke for itself when we said, okay, do you really understand how much this helps if we can do the iterations so much faster? And that was actually the main goal that we wanted to show. I mean, we had a lot of discussions about things like hardware costs or whatever, but that doesn't really explain how Onshape is helping us. It's really in the way of working, the workflow, which improves so much that you can just completely change your way of working compared to before, and that's what really drew them towards our wish to invest in Onshape.
Thanks, Bart. That kind of gets back to what Adrian was saying earlier about we didn't really focus so much on features and functions, but on the way that that Onshape allows us to change the way we work. Yeah. Thanks very much. The next question is regarding transition from other tools. So, Adrian, can you give us some insight into how your engineers adapted from their previous tool to Onshape?
Yeah, so in terms of like modeling and just designing in a different system, that's pretty seamless, has been pretty seamless. Whenever you present it, there's always kind of some highlight questions, concerns as far as how I would do this, how would I would do that. But in general, like the adoption rate in terms of the learning curve, it's been really fast. An example I like to give is last summer, we had an intern that she never done Onshape before. And for her internship project, I just asked her to do it in Onshape. And she was really kind of nervous about it, but within 2 days, she was already making progress and said that like it felt really natural coming from other systems that are they were founded by the same founders of Onshape. So that's just at a kind of individual level. In terms of like project data, we're taking a project kind of driven migration. So we're not really focusing on migrating legacy data. We're focusing on our newer projects to be kind of hosted or being born in the native Onshape environment, just because our environment allows us to kind of focus that in that aspect of it. So it's going to be a more of a evolution than an actual migration.
Great, thank you.
Steve,
I think, yeah.
Steve, I was just going to add, I saw Redland was nodding his head there. I know that you had some new engineers that had come in that never used Onshape. Do you want to share your experience on how quickly they picked up the tool?
Yep. So actually, you'll find if you have completely new engineers straight out of university, literally not a problem. Absolutely fine, because they don't know what they don't know, so they've not learned any bad habits from another package or ways of doing things. All of the same tool sets are there. They might be slightly named differently, and some of them are integrated. So you're adding and subtracting material in the same thing. It's just a different button on the same extrude or whatever it's going to be. The challenge you'll have is on that journey of transfer is your time served engineers, your guys that are legacy, really used to spending 20, 30 years in a CAD package. But we did have someone in that situation who transferred across, and I would say give them a couple of months, give them the time to make the transition, they'll love it. They won't want to go back. So we had previously we carried SolidWorks licenses just so that we could have access to the legacy hardware, the things that we've been doing. And that engineer was, he liked to do things in SolidWorks because that's what he knew. I don't think he's used it. It's not installed on his current laptop. He's now 3 years in, just doesn't go back. And there's that. I would also say, if you're transitioning a business to this and you have a whole load of legacy projects, I would do exactly kind of what Adrian was saying, which is to
focus teams working on it. And then, if you need to move and migrate legacy data across, then you can do that kind of project at a time, product at a time. But it's not a case of you transfer your entire old ecosystem. It's not going to work like that. You're learning a brand new way of working, which has all of these additional benefits around CAD.
Thank you, Steve. We have Steve Myers. We have one more, probably time for one more question.
Okay, let's see. So, how about Redland again? Could you kind of talk to us about how crucial the collaboration capabilities of Onshape were for designing your automation and robotic equipment?
There are a number of real strong advantages to the collaboration feature set. So if you have a distributed team like we do, we got a guy who goes and works for 3 weeks. Every 6 weeks or something, he goes and works in Finland. He's got family, accommodate a house there. But he's one of our senior engineers, and he needs to mentor and oversee design work that's still happening in Coventry in the UK. And it's just literally not a problem. He just he can work from anywhere. He doesn't sign in. It can be shadowing an apprentice or a junior engineer, literally watching what they're doing real time wherever he is in the world, making changes in the same file, having a video call or a phone call at the same time. It's just like being in the same office, but actually you're sharing this workspace. And that's, if you have any form of remote working, or if you have to also do design changes, you're at the site and you want to feedback that, that enhancement. It's just, you can't do it any other way. It's fabulous. What was the rest of the question?
I think you've got it. Yep, that's
okay. That's
great.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Any other questions left, Steve, or should we wrap up?
There's one here that I'd like to get to, and that is, I think you already answered this to some extent, but are the three of you running Onshape aside a legacy CAD package? I know Adrian spoke to that a little bit earlier. The question is, how common is that, right? Is that something that you expected and something that you are doing to some extent as you transition?
So I know Adrian is, I know Redland's transitioned from a previous package. Bart is probably the one to answer the question because he's running a separate CAD system for the kind of back office engineering team. Bart, do you want to answer that question?
Yeah, I will. Yeah, but we're not really using them side to side. I mean, what we're really trying to do is make a split somewhere, so that we say, okay, the whole front office, all the concept design, everything which is related to that will be then done in Onshape, and then the back office will still work in Creo. And with us, it's a very big step to go from Creo to Onshape completely, because we have all the factories, everything, all the companies, like in 72 countries, which are all working in Creo now. So to make the step at once would be very difficult. But it's very, very simple. If you just take a part of your people and say, okay, Onshape is a new way of working, well, then that will be perfectly possible. I wouldn't use it in parallel, because that's really not it. I mean, Onshape is a very capable CAD package, and you can do almost everything which you can do in for example, Creo or any other CAD system, also in Onshape. So I wouldn't use them side by side, but they can complement each other very well, especially because Onshape focuses very much on the whole communication, like we heard in the last half hour. And everything which is related to that, and for example, Creo, but also other packages can maybe focus more on simulation, or maybe on high-end drawings or whatever. And I think that complements each other quite well, and it should not be a problem.
Hey, great. So I think, Steve, we're out of time for the now with the questions. So really, all that's left to say is a huge thank you to Redland, Bart and Adrian for taking the time. I know for Bart and Redland it's late over here in Europe, so really much appreciated. And Adrian, thank you for joining us as well. I hope our audience has enjoyed the session and gained some insights into how DHL, Festo and Dexcom are transforming their product development. And I'm going to say, I wish you all a very successful and productive Onshape Live. Thank you.